I will be brutally honest. Ain't nothing but being brutally honest. Coming at you with another video.
What's up, everybody? Ladies and gentlemen, we're on another episode of All 31 Teams, and we got a Rams fan that's whipping the division of the NFC West for the 49ers. But let's welcome my special guest, Alvin Waters, man. How's it going, bro?
Good, man. Excited to be on here. Been quite some time since I've been in the on-demand space, but this will be actually my first on-demand conversation with a fellow Niners fan, and I could say a 49ers fan that I can actually call my friend.
Oh, yeah. We've known each other for a while. I know I know we kind of have a good debate. We have a respectful debate, but for those people who don't know who you are, man, what got you being into a Rams fan, bro?
Well, let me take a step back, and I mean, I'm going to be transparent. So in the 1990s, as you know, I mean, LA didn't have a football team. So, I mean, I grew up under different circumstances where I didn't get to reap the benefits of the days when the Rams were in Anaheim. So, I mean, you know how circumstances are. You know, you don't control a lot of the circumstances that you grow up in. So, like in LA, back when the Rams left in 1994, I mean, I was fortunate to be able to go to Dodger games, Laker games, went to my first Kings game when Staples opened in 2001. And it was because, I grew up in a single parent household where my mom would actually get tickets from her bosses to different games. The unfortunate thing is Rams were not in the mix. So for a while, I didn't really have a team. I can honestly say I didn't have a team. I was getting acclimated to the sport, getting to know the sport. But the year that I could say the Rams finally grew on me was 2001. And it was just through watching their phenomenal playing with the greatest show on turf. I would have to say Marshall Faulk is my number one reason why I became a fan. As far as in my family, it does go back generations because actually one of my cousins actually became season ticket holders of the Rams back when they were at the Coliseum. They won tickets on The Price is Right, actually.
Price is Right was something then, yeah.
So that was pretty cool. But 2001 was a time where, yes, they made it to the Super Bowl. But see, most people in my shoes in, kind of seeing the downfall, the injuries on Kurt Warner when Mark Bulger had to be the backup to take over, was not a bad backup, but definitely didn't do what Kurt Warner did. A lot of people would have jumped ship in the circumstances that I became a fan, because it went downhill from there. And, it got to the point where, I mean, after 2003, that was where they pretty much fell off the cliff. But I was still there. I mean, I was still there. I mean, it was to the point where even probably the worst season that I've experienced as a Rams fan, at least for me in my generation, was under Steve Spagnuolo when we went 1-15, or sorry, 1-16, and I never felt so excited about that one win over Detroit. And I'll never forget it too, because it was a time where I was working night jobs in the restaurant industry. So I couldn't watch the games live because of my work schedule. So I would make sure to watch the tape. Um I mean, I would watch the recording, so I'll just never forget sitting there at night after my night shift and seeing the team pour that ice bucket on Steve Spagnuolo. Now, see, Steve Spagnuolo, he was an excellent defensive coach on the Patriots, but when it came to head coaching, I'm going to be quite honest, it was in over his head.
No, he was a Giants DC, actually. He was the one that beat the perfect Patriots team, actually.
Right. Sorry. Thanks for.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, a good DC, like he did well for the Chiefs also. So it's like, can't be a head coach for every purpose, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, and you can make the same argument. Like, look what happened look what happened when Staley became the coach of the Chargers. I mean, my comment on that simply is, again, phenomenal defensive coach. But when he became the head coach, I mean, I'm going to be honest, it was in over his head.
Yeah, I think Charger players weren't really buying into him, so it was kind of hard. But I think the Harbaugh hire just seems very intriguing because I think players are going to buy into Harbaugh.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be honest, in that situation, it could go either way. I mean, it could make them the legitimate threat. I mean, I've seen potential in that team, even though we do joke around and call them our tenants at SoFi.
The renters.
Yeah. So I would definitely say that I would definitely say I've seen some circumstances where they were a legitimate threat. I mean, I thought they were one of the playoff favorites, but it's just unfortunately, they were basically, they didn't have the right set of circumstances.
Yeah, it had to do with the poor coaching or the injuries too. So there was a lot of factors. But since we look at how you look, I mean, so you kind of been through the ups and downs as a Rams fan. You looked at how you looked at it from a team's perspective. But I mean, there was a lot of worse times. I mean, I guess from the Steve Spagnuolo, it can't be that bad compared to the Dennis Ericksons or the Chip Kellys. I mean, if you were in those worst ones, then I don't know, man. It's just one of those type of disasters. But you guys have always found ways to get better in some circumstances. I think with Jeff Fisher, you guys had the most talented roster, but just couldn't.
Okay, so arguably on the defensive end, I would agree with that because we had the 4-3 defense that I'm going to admit I have been starving for that 4-3 because once Wade Phillips took over, I was just, let's just say, just watching it for me. And some people on here might not agree with me. I have a question in the chat of whose house it is, and you might not agree, but Rams house for sure.
That's what he's trying. He's trying to give you that question. He's trying to throw it out there. I mean, that's just his way of saying it. He's a Dolphins fan. He's a good
interesting. But anyway, where did I leave off? I'm sorry. Oh, I was back on the defense. So I was, let's just say watching Wade Phillips' defense. I mean, it was cringeworthy. If I'm being honest, it just wasn't that. It just wasn't that 4-3 defense, but I had to learn to just get used to it because it was the same thing under Philip Morris. So I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I could definitely say our defense has definitely improved in the last the last 6 years that the Rams have really turned themselves around, especially under the circumstances where at times, our defense got decimated, of course, that year after we won the Super Bowl. But, McVay's one of those coaches that he's really managed to, the fact that he was able to turn a team around when it was one of those situations where with Fisher, it got worse before it got better. I'll give Shanahan credit where credit's due. He obviously did something right with this triage.
I mean, a lot of this had to come from the ground up. When we started off with Chip Kelly, a lot of our talent players were all gone because a lot of the guys from the hardball, they retired, they quit. So it was all from the ground up. So there was maybe a couple of hardball guys who stuck around for a while, but after that, Joe Staley retired eventually. I mean, there was a little change of the culture. So under the circumstances, Shanahan had to pick the players he wanted. I mean, when you looked at Sean McVay it was like he was getting the keys to the car and he did a good job out of it. So, I give credit where it's due, he's not afraid of taking chances,
And think about an environment like LA where, expectations are extremely high, no matter what sport it is. So
yeah,
that had to be a lot of pressure on him when he was hired as the head coach. You're coming into an environment like LA with high expectations. Let's be honest, this is one of the toughest sports environments in my opinion, not just because I'm from LA.
I mean, there's different arguments. Like you can have the LA market, but then you have to look at New York also. That's the biggest pressure too, from what I'm told. But it's kind of like evenly the same. So you see the expectation when anybody who goes to the Giants or Jets, there's that big mark. But LA, of course, big market. It's got a huge attraction market. You look at the Lakers. That's always been the expectation for the Lakers. You look at the Dodgers. Dodgers have, but then the Rams, they've been a part of this LA market. They've just been kind of like that. You know how I compare the Rams to? They're like that abandoned father that just moved away for so many years, and then you finally come back to go see your kids all of a sudden. That's what it seems like. It seems like that kind of like. But this is a good question right here.
So he's asking.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, so I guess touching on the legacy of Aaron Donald, if you think about it, so around the era that we were discussing, he came in under probably not the best circumstances on the Rams. This was pretty much when we were in rebuild mode. Yeah, but arguably, a lot of people may not agree with this, but hands down, probably one of the best defensive tackles of this era, at least, that you're going to see. He even one thing that I did notice about him was he came down in size. And how many defensive tackles do you actually see in this era that can actually that's able to carry the weight and take on what, 2 guys?
Yeah, it's hard to do, especially if you're undersized and all that stuff. Like there's some big guys that can actually maneuver pretty well, but usually the smaller they are, the tougher they are to block too. So
I gotta admit though, I have to admit though, I was worried before Aaron Donald made the decision to retire. I said, if we don't continue to make him happy, it's because he's been at least a decade into as a defensive tackle. So personally, for me, definitely a phenomenal career. But the reality is I think the defensive tackle, they take the biggest beating. I would say, in my opinion, in the like as far as on the main roster. So I actually have a close personal friend, from my church who actually regularly saw him at the Nordstroms in Woodland Hills with his kids. I mean, the guy's a family man. When you see him in person, he's one of those guys that sticks closely with his family. But I would definitely say as this team turned around, I mean, Aaron Donald was the Rams defense. I mean, hands down. He was the best. I would say the best defensive tackle the best defensive person we've had since Deacon Jones.
Yeah, Deacon was the original sack artist, like before there was even statistics. I mean, in his era, he was a dominant force, and I mean, the technique that he used to call the head slap thing, that's not even used no more in today's NFL.
And let me touch on one of my comical moments about Aaron Donald, because I know a lot of fans on social media would criticize when how he would react to certain players, and it even happened in the Super Bowl. That one of the incidents when he got into it with one of the players basically got under his skin. I mean, the bottom line is Aaron Donald is the person that was about the game. If you mess with his focus in the game, you're messing with him. I mean, look, I don't condone the violence on the field because you got to be a professional, but that's just who Aaron Donald is.
I mean, we've seen him from time to time what he's all about. We've seen I don't know if you want to bring this up, but this is like an old like Monday Night Meltdown where Donald just drops his helmet, pissed off, and I think he was trying to choke Quentin Patton, like he was trying to strangle him, and then he kicked Carlos Hyde or something. I don't know which player it was, but that's how you knew Donald was a little bit out of like rage at times. Like
he was smash mouth.
Yeah, he hated losing so bad, so I can see why he was so frustrated. But yeah,
you know what would have been, but what would have? I mean, I know we shouldn't be going into the shoulda, woulda, couldas, but one of our most underrated defensive defense was Laurinaitis.
That linebacker, that linebacker.
John Laurinaitis, son of WWE, well, now former WWE, but
People power. No, just playing. But that's his uncle, actually, not his dad.
He would have been if he was still on there, I mean, that team would have been unstoppable. And then if we still had Chris Long on there, I mean honestly, I think it's safe to say we probably would have tipped the iceberg in getting another Super Bowl, but it's too late for that. It's the reality is what I've learned from this is it's really hard to, it takes years to build a defense. I mean, you saw it with the Rams. It took them from 2000 all the way to 2016, so 16 years. So, I mean,
yeah,
you can make the argument it was the same case with the Niners.
Yeah, it takes
16 years, but
it takes years to build a foundation and all that other stuff. We had to go through the, in the 2000s. I would always be grateful for the Derek Smiths, the Derek Smiths of the world, or the Julian Petersons, even though he didn't play too long. I'm always grateful for the Jimmy Winborns, even though they weren't great. But then you look at the Patrick Willis and the Navarro Bowmans, and then you go on to the Fred Warners and now the Dre Greenlaws. That's just – we've always been kind of capable of building linebackers, like from Eric Armstead to DeForest Buckner. Now it's just those guys are all gone now. So we're going – Bosa's been our heart and soul of our defense, so it's kind of been – it's one way or the other. But I guess this was a random question. He just want to throw it out there just for fun. Come on, the guy was the best. Like, he was an all-purpose back, but I guess the name kind of seems familiar with the Waters, but without the extra.
Yeah, I got that a lot in high school. The answer is no. I am not related to Ricky Waters because my last name only has one T in it, just like Chris said.
Come on, like he's the actual meaning of the word water, man. Like water, like you think of Brian Waters, the guard for the Chiefs now, that he has the one T on it. But yeah, you think of the quality liquid or something like that. But looking into the Rams that last season, I know we were having a little debate like last year during the season, and this is what you told me, but I want you to tell me why last season. You were telling me something pretty interesting from last season. Like you thought this was something out of your perspective.
Okay, I mean you'll have to refresh my memory.
Well, okay.
About that.
I remember you brought up this like, well, if we make it to the playoffs, it's a bonus. We don't expect to go anywhere this year. That's what you put out there.
because number one, we weren't even in the conversation for the playoffs. We were technically, I mean, other people might not agree with this, but I mean, we can arguably say we were in rebuild mode. But I would definitely say though, this was the season. I think this was probably, even though, we didn't go as far as we would have liked to in the playoffs, I could say this was the season where Snead truly proved his value. And I'll tell you why. Because the fact that we were in rebuild mode and he was able to scout somebody like Puka Nacua, I mean, not even a first round pick. And I mean, he molds this guy into somebody that sets an all-time rookie record. So a lot of these players, including Kyron Williams, who reminds me, by the way, of one of my other favorites, Steve Jackson. And ironically, one of the interviews with Kyron Williams, he actually said that Steve Jackson was actually his idol. So a lot of these players just, I mean, these players honestly shocked the world, and it's unheard of, at least in my opinion, to make the playoffs when you're in rebuild mode. You just kind of have that real. I mean, I'm more of a, a lot of, there's some Rams fans that would likely ostracize me for this. Fine. I mean, it's America.
I mean, we all form an opinion on how we feel, like some of them just think realistically or they just want to wait and see what happens. But when you look at, okay, when you say Kyron Williams, the way he plays like a bigger running back, but he's not big than what people look at him. Like, what is he, like 195 or something? But he plays like a big back, like he's hard to tackle. I mean, Steven Jackson's a great comparison, but Steven Jackson was a power back, a big physical back. Like you had to tackle this 240-pound type of monster. I mean, this guy was. A lot of linebackers have said when tackling this guy, he hurt or something like that. Like they just didn't want to tackle him like that.
Yeah, and I mean, just kind of going back to your point of why the pessimism. It's because at the end of the day, it's just understanding the game well. It's just understanding it. It's just understanding the team that you need to be a playoff contender. Now, I wouldn't say I was fully writing them off. I think my mindset was more of a we'll see. Because
approach type of thing, yeah.
This was one of those seasons. It was really a tough one to call. I mean, because see, I've been down this road before with just one rebuild after another with the Rams, and yes, the coaching circumstances were different. I mean, there was a couple of scenarios where we barely made the wild card when we were in the rebuild mode, but to get as far as we did, though, I mean, that says a lot about the team. And one of the comments that I made to a bunch of other fans is we were not a fully stacked team.
That's what you
So
said.
just think about this. If we were able to make it this far, not even being a fully stacked team, just imagine what is going to happen when
With all
we
the
are.
young talent. With all the
Now,
young
yeah,
talent.
we're now I'm going to arguably say Aaron Donald was the core of our defense, but I'm stoked about our draft picks, at least on paper. The only thing I will admit that I'm nervous about was we lost our defensive coach. So now, I mean, that's probably my only concern is now we're going to be rebuilding. I guess we're basically going to be rebuilding that aggression that we need. And I mean, we'll see what our defensive coach does. So I would say that's probably another we'll see
Type of approach. See how he goes. Yeah.
Because when you have this much attrition in your coaching staff, I mean, you can understand why that could get concerning at times.
Well, it's got to come with more experience as a play caller. And sometimes those first year play callers, it takes some time to adjust for some of them. Like when we were hiring Robert Sala, the guy only had experience as a linebackers coach. He didn't really have the play call experience. D'Amico Ryans, he just had the experience playing the game of football, but it took him until he was a position coach and became a good DC.
Right.
Steve Wilkes, the experience was a huge factor, but he just did seem to adjust the way that the style we were running on defense, so that's why we moved on. But I feel like when we're bringing somebody in-house, it's kind of somebody that's already knowing our defense, so it probably won't be a drop-off. Like, I may be skeptical on the promotion of
Chris Shula.
No, like the guy that we just have, like he kind of just like, we just have to wait and see what happens with him. But it's like he's got good experience, he's got a lot of good experiences, but he's just never been a DC. He actually been a special teams coach. Forget his name, but it just has to pop up on my name. But he's currently our defensive coordinator, but he got promoted because of Nick Sorensen. There you go, Nick Sorensen. Nick Sorensen, you look at him, he was a journeyman NFL player, played safety, was actually a special teams coach for the Jaguars, but actually had more experience coaching Seattle's defense. So I think he understands the kind of defense we're running. So maybe that's why we get him for that. And players want to play for him. So I guess they vouch for this hiring so much. Oh, yeah. Speaking of your DC, he comes from the Shula family. So maybe there's some success from the family business, like they say.
I mean, I think I might have covered that earlier. I mean, it's more of a we'll see
type of situation, but that's kind of like how I feel about Sorensen. If it can work well, we'll see. I'm not really liking the hire personally, but I think it's only because he knows our system, so maybe that won't be a bad transition.
But however, I mean, you understand, I mean, at the end of the day, though, I mean, it's going to come down to the coach is only going to be as good as the players. But I mean, I'm projecting top tiers in the NFC West back to Rams and Niners. So, it's really going to take him being adaptable, especially in this climate now where, we're dealing with one injury after another. I think that those are things that I'm going to be looking at. I'm going to be looking at, is he going to be situational, or, I mean, is his defense just going to be predictable? I mean, those are just the things that I have to look at. I mean, are they gonna play that defense all four quarters? So then, because in the end, you want to conserve the defense as much as possible throughout the season, because one of the things that has hurt the Rams come playoffs is that when the defense gets tired, I mean, that's a problem.
Yeah, it gets worn out, and that could be like something you can like because it can be the matter of how you win in the like in those top quarters, but fourth quarters where you mostly want to win the most. So that could be the only concern. But since you're talking about how you guys have had some issues with your backup quarterback, this is a familiar face that I gotta say, man. Jimmy Garoppolo, man, you guys signed this guy. In a way, I can see why you guys got him because he knows this. He would be more familiar to the system. But a lot of our fans were pushing for this guy. I said, no, let's move on with this guy. I don't want to see this guy again.
And that's I have a lot of skepticism. Like our only advantage would be probably, when it comes time for the Rams to face the Niners. I mean, he'll kind of be the only person who is familiar with Shanahan's schemes because it was because of Shanahan's play calling that, I'll be honest, that made Jimmy Garoppolo look good. Yeah. I mean, it was honestly his offensive line that helped set him over the top. But you remember though that what was the problem for the Rams was that we had difficulty stopping the run. So, there were those moments where that's why when I would talk amongst my fans and by the way, for those watching, I'm a Rams season ticket holder. I show up to the games, win or lose, all home games. I do not even sell my tickets, but just kind of fast forward, just kind of getting back on track here. I mean, it was one of those situations where we were struggling to stop the run. And one of the things that I told him in the year that we were in the playoffs, the only way for us to win this playoff game is we got to stop the run because they don't trust Jimmy G. So this is my concern. If he has to step up with Stafford, heaven forbid, it could be that same situation of we have to have a run that cannot be stopped when it comes to playing with Jimmy G. He's had his moments where he's gotten the ball downfield, but he's not consistent. And let me cover this question real quick.
You're right about the consistency part. Like the running game has to be perfect for him to be able to maximize what he could do. But like when you compare the difference, like I get a lot of these comparisons from the other fans. They're saying, well, look at the difference with Jimmy and look at how Kyle makes him look. But then when they bring up Brock Purdy, they're saying he's another system kind of quarterback. How would you compare the difference between these two guys?
Sorry, compare.
Like, how do you compare the two difference? Like when you see Brock play and then Jimmy Garoppolo, like people keep saying this is just another system quarterback. Maybe this is just something Shanahan knows how to do. Like if that's the case, how come CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins never excel?
I don't think so. I mean, I could say Brock Purdy, he's different. I mean, he definitely. There's a huge. I mean, if you want my honest,
from an outside fan perspective,
comparing Purdy to Jimmy Garoppolo is comparing apples to oranges. Purdy got the ball down the field way better.
And he quick releases it quickly, so it's not like
he was. I mean, because I was paying attention in the Super Bowl, and I mean, he's had. I mean, I don't know how many minutes of flawless passes down the field. I didn't see a lot of that from Jimmy Garoppolo. I saw more of his run being flawless than his passing. And if it was passing, it was usually his screen passes. But I would say Purdy sort of reminds me a little bit of Kurt Warner.
Ooh,
I have to put my opinion in.
Okay, not a bad comparison because Warner did have all the talent, but then he kind of maximized what he could be. So I think we can agree they both were number 13. They both had journeys, but one was undrafted, but then you were going to talk about the grade, I guess, like since he asked you this question.
I'm a pretty hard critic, so because it's on paper and because I'm not one of those people to, define our season based on what's on paper, would have to give it an A minus. We finally at least drafted an edge rusher, which I've been saying one season after another. We are dying for an edge rusher. We need an outside linebacker. The reason why A minus, we still need a safety and we still need a kicker.
I mean, that will take care of itself from there. But see, A minus, that's at least you weren't being too critical the previous year. I mean, I think you were kind of like wanting to see what happened. So when I look at the Rams draft, I got to admit, it's a pretty damn good draft that you guys did. I mean, you guys kind of like got yourself the 2 Florida State duels. You got the D tackle, then you got
that was what I was the most excited about. I mean, is it going to guarantee us anything?
But it makes you guys better on paper.
But there's going to be some familiarity in that camaraderie, though.
Yep. It comes a long ways, and especially the way you guys were drafting. Like, you guys got the running back from Michigan, like Blake Corum. That just seems kind of like you guys really want to start being more of a running team and open up the passing game. And
yeah, because we just were. I mean, I have to admit, the last few seasons we were with our running game, like ever since Todd Gurley, basically got traded, that that was where we lost the edge on our running. I absolutely loved Todd Gurley. My biggest problem with Sean McVay, though, it's you got to have you have to have somebody else to carry the weight with him. And that was just so I think now maybe Sean McVay's finally waking up to the, we got to start positioning ourselves where our run is more predictable.
Yeah.
And we have a front that's more of a threat, because I would say that that our running game for the last few seasons has been more of a moving target for us. Like, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, like what made you guys very difficult was your passing game. You guys had your receivers open, and even if your line wasn't the best, at least it was able to hold up well. But this offseason, you guys went aggressive on trying to fix the offensive line. So that's going to be the main kind of key how we're going to match up on you guys. So just from an outside looking in, I think the Rams did pretty well in the draft. And you look at what you guys did this offseason. So I'm not the kind of guy, I got to keep it between the lines and be realistic. I think the Rams have actually made the most strides out of all the people in the division. The Niners, we don't want to do so much, but looking at how the Rams are, they are pushing. So you got to take it into really consideration how this is going to be a good rivalry. Like, you guys have won a couple years ago, which I'll admit, you guys have capitalized. You guys, like, how they say the money in the bank, you capitalize, you take and you guys got it. So, yeah.
And you know what? It's honestly, if anyone was to ask me if you could turn things around, would you do it again? I absolutely would. I mean, Les Snead basically changed he basically changed the NFL as far as leveraging your draft capital, because that was unheard of prior to 2021. But and that's what I like about him. That's why, I'm going to be honest, I will be in grieving when the time comes for him to hang it up, because he's an out of the box thinker. And personally, where this is placing the Rams right now, they're definitely going to be at least a legitimate threat in my book.
I mean, long term, they're in the right direction. So you look at how you guys are building your young talent. So from an outside looking in, you have to look at how Les Snead has operated, and that's what it makes it so interesting. But I think you guys did drafted a kicker from Stanford. I forget his name, Carty or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's more of a hit or miss though when it's an undrafted free agent. But I have faith that Les Snead is definitely the coach to mold an undrafted free agent. I mean, it makes financial sense, but I think my perspective on that for the chat is, I mean, I have to see how he performs.
Yeah. Kickers are kind of like, kickers are kind of like the least security job because they could have a bad day and be cut the following day or weeks. So really depends on them. But looking at the perspective of the rivalry, we're gonna just, this rivalry to me is kind of like the making of how you look at the Giants and Dodgers. You look at, I mean, Lakers and Warriors. It's kind of like, I don't know. Wouldn't say a rivalry, but they just had a little fan rivalry kind of perspective.
It's pretty. I mean, I could arguably say very similar to the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees.
Or the Bears or Packers, kind of.
Pretty much. But
I think it's the most underrated rivalry because it's been around since the 1950s, so it's kind of been there for many years. Just
and arguably, ownership, I would say on the Rams part after 1980, once Georgia took over, I would say that was pretty much according to, because I read a lot. So I would say just in reading about that from 1980 all the way to 1994, it was on her agenda to move the team to St. Louis. So not sure if you heard of this backstory, but the death of her late husband is still to this day pretty suspect because you go scuba diving, how do you suddenly drown? So there's a little
bit of something with that. So I guess
there's a little suspicion because think about it. Then, the team was acquired. She didn't really put much into the team for that decade. And it was kind of the same argument that the Rams fans in St. Louis made about Stan Kroenke, that he purposely tanked the team to justify their move. I will say though, Georgia played the game well because the city of Anaheim was on the brink of Chapter 13 bankruptcy. So by the time it hit 1994, not only did they file for Chapter 13 bankruptcy, but just think about this. Like, ask yourself this question: the city under bankruptcy, are they in the position? Is any city under bankruptcy in the position to front money for a sports team?
No, I don't think so. But I think I think some people were upset by that direction by moving. I mean, I don't know if there was other options, but St. Louis was another top market teams that people don't even mention. Like, you look at baseball, of course, it's like a good market for that type of sport. You look at hockey. There's St. Louis has a good sporting world, but it's not the top of the world. It's a Midwest market. And when you guys moved down there, it was probably like the most kind of like how some of the fans felt divided a little bit. I know there were some old school Rams fans that were still with the Rams team, but then there were some of them who just didn't like that direction whatsoever.
Which was kind of why, just going back, especially because look, I'm going to be transparent. I know there's a ton of Niners fans in LA, but the reality is, we lost a generation of fans,
It takes a long time.
And the other factor too is it's usually a team becomes more iconic after winning 3 Super Bowls. I mean, that's what happened with the Raiders. That's what happened with the Niners. And then, of course, there's so many variations because, look, LA is a good football town, but
It's a good market to have.
the reality, LA is a melting pot city. It has been for decades. I mean, we have people moving from all over the country to LA
to live a good life over there, which there's a lot to do over there. So,
and the cost of living, of course, is extremely high. You can make the same argument for the Bay Area, but
yeah, same thing with the cost. It's a little higher for a lot of them, but the cheap cost of living is in the Central Valley, so you get at least something reasonable over here.
But just going back to the rivalry, I think back in the Coliseum days, from what I understand from conversations from fellow fans at a lot of the games, is it's always been split. Like,
it's been a split competitive game, yeah.
It's always been split, like, as far as, like, even attendance. Like, it was at least half and half, but then, of course, the move kind of
took it.
I'll be honest, it added insult to injury. Look, realistically, when the team was going to be moved, was going to come back, and I was projecting it, I was excited, but at the same time, I knew. Look, I had a lot of friends that had their teams established from the 90s. My oldest sister's a Cowboys fan. I have friends who were rooting for the Steelers since the 90s. So I pretty much already knew the fans here were going to still stick with their teams, which, to be honest, I'm fine with that. Because I personally would rather you stick with your team than pretend to jump on and then suddenly, things get rough and then you jump off. But I would probably say, though, this rivalry is definitely a fierce one. Just to give you an idea of fierce, I personally don't know if I would step in the Levi's as a Rams fan.
No, it's kind of like, if you come as friendly, I don't think they'll bother you like that. I've seen a lot of different fans be more chill. There's just the ones that like to start shit. I've always tried to keep my distance from other people, so if anything goes on. But you get a little bit of a good experience between. I know there's some that might say something, but if you just kind of just do what you do, I don't think they'll mess with you.
And Chris, I have to bring this up now that we're sort of on this subject, but I bring this up every season when the game comes up. The fans that we have in LA who are 49ers fans who root for the Dodgers.
You guys get that mixed in. Why does it seem like an insult? Like, don't we have to just pick any other like I don't understand that part. Like, okay, maybe if it's just the separate sport, that's like me saying if I want to be a Niners and Chiefs fan, which I'm never going to be. That's just what it seems like, But,
well, it's not a matter of telling a person to pick the team. It's the whole. You actually get some fans from LA chanting "Beat LA," which is a double.
They're from there.
It's a double standard. That's the thing that I'm pointing out that a lot of people don't understand. But shifting gears, just as far as the rivalry, I'll never forget those before, of course, the Rams came back to LA. There was those moments where I think there was one of those games before they moved back where Rams and Niners would go into double overtime. That happened on multiple occasions. That speaks volumes on the rivalry, and that was when both of our teams were not even at our best.
Yeah, like they were like a team that like there was times we were just like we were like kind of like a below 500 team. We would probably bring our best. I mean, you looked at I think we only came away with 2 tie games like during the all-time series. Even though we've had 10 more wins over you guys, but overall, you look at the history, we've had 2 NFC conference meetings, so we split between them.
Yeah.
But if you look at the record, whoever won that conference actually won the Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
there's a good history to it. So the rivalry just doesn't get mentioned. But now that when I look at this rivalry, there is a meaning to this rivalry. Like, no disrespect to Seattle fans. You guys have destroyed us for quite a while. Now it's kind of like we're taking some karma from you guys now. So I don't know. It's just like when I look at the Rams compared to the Seahawks, I don't look at the Seattle that way. It's like we still got to build something more. Like, okay, you guys have tormented us, so it's kind of like more like, damn, we can't even do anything about it. But with the Rams, it's more like you guys kind of did sting us pretty badly, and it's like the little brother just got the best out of us in some ways.
But you know what though, and it was one of those moments though where you know, especially in 2021, it was that third time's a charm moment. Yeah. I'm going to honestly, hands down, I'm going to say Aaron Donald was the one. I was at that NFC Championship game. Probably the most anxious I've probably ever been at a game in person, but I would say Donald's the one who took matters into his own hands in that moment. If it wasn't for him, that game could have gone either way. But to me personally, and I tell a lot of the fans this, that, you know, those regular season wins are meaningful, especially with the division, because it does give you a better edge for home field advantage. We didn't even have a first round bye that year. I mean, we still managed to edge further, and then Shanahan was being Shanahan, upsetting Green Bay in their weather.
They were the number 1 team too, so that was the fun part. We just came into their house and barely beat them on an ice cold weather. So that's like, but we came in as underdogs. I think we were like the number 6 seed or something.
I personally didn't see you guys as I honestly saw you guys as a problem for them.
Yeah,
it was just the only disadvantage was weather. That's about it.
Yeah. And traveling's not the easy factor, because sometimes it's better to have a home field advantage personally, because if you have a home field advantage, you have more of a favorable matchup than most teams. But last year we had everything in our favor. So it wasn't like what really hurted us was just Kansas City was just coming in at the right time, and you know, Kansas City just did what they always do. But I'm not the kind of fan that's just going to make excuses like most people. Like, maybe there's conspiracy, but how many holding calls have the Chiefs got? You know, I just never understand that part.
Aaron, like the year that we won the Super Bowl, and then the year after that, it's like Aaron Donald got held all season long. Because he's a
respectful player. He's a respectful defender. There's ways they want to try to get away with that, but just to make a strong argument, bro, do you feel like, come on, the Chiefs were the most penalized holding team during the regular season, and how the heck do you go into the Super Bowl with no holding? I mean, I'm not making excuses about it, but Shanahan did not do his job right, so I'll say that. We made a couple miscues, but one thing I'm still kind of holding on the doubts on is the Chiefs, bro. You had the most penalized offensive linemen, and you guys couldn't get called a holding? Not once? Not once?
I will agree with that. I mean, there's that argument out there that the Chiefs are basically the poster team now. They
did it to the Eagles too. They did it to the Philadelphia Eagles too, from my understanding. So
yeah, so I mean, I would say but probably the only thing, though, that I saw in that Super Bowl with you all, though, was I was a bit stunned because the one thing that has beat us was Shanahan's clock management. I don't get why he does that in the playoffs, though. Why his clock management is different in the playoffs.
Because he gets too cute. He tries to think he can get a little too creative at times. So it's like He is unpredictable, especially in the big stage. Like he doesn't even think what got him to the tournament. So
Yeah.
to answer Grant Dyer's question, I would be down to go over there if I had a chance to. It's just financially, financially, I'm dealing with something right now. If money wasn't quite the issue, I would go down there. It would probably be a blast just to go down to LA to go hang out with Alvin and go check out the game in person. That would be kind of cool. But it's just a lot of circumstances. I'm not the kind of guy that's making it through right now. So
And to add to that, I mean, I could add to the comment in this chat that, I mean, I didn't get to go to St. Louis when, they were in St. Louis and I wanted to go, but I was in high school. I didn't have the money to travel. I mean, I did a few times try to go down to Qualcomm when the Rams came to San Diego, but I just wasn't in that set of circumstances. It's now.
yeah.
I mean, I'm able to do that, but if it wasn't for the career I was in, I'd be in the same boat. I'd be going to 1 or 2 games maybe.
Yeah, like I don't know if I'm gonna go around this year because I have to look at how my schedule looks like, and then plus the income of the bills and all that. It just keeps a lot
Yeah.
of stuff. It's been in the way, but I'm not ruling out this possibility because it's gonna come down to that road one day. It's gonna be that road one day. I'll see Alvin at a game. I'll be down LA. It's gonna be epic, but it's just a lot of circumstances. There was a time where I actually thought I was gonna go over there, and then things it's like, damn. Because I thought I was gonna plan it up pretty well, and then it just backfired. I'm like, damn. I had everything planned up. Yeah.
Well, maybe. I mean, I do, believe it or not, I do have some Niner friends that are trying to convince me to come to Levi's. So, I mean, that's a possibility.
I mean, my goal is to go down to your guys' stadium at least to get out there, just to experience different perspective. But I mean, I've been down to the Cardinal Stadium before, so it's nothing like it's all right. But it's like if things weren't in my way and I had everything financially good, then I wouldn't have to be dealing with what I'm dealing with. So, I got to be the person and help out a little bit because just hasn't been the good time. And so I had to at least try to put in some more extra hours and all that stuff. I got to do some extra things. But since this is all, yeah.
But you know what, though? It doesn't change the fact that we can't enjoy the season. Trust me,
Yeah.
I've had some memorable moments before I was even able to go to Rams games. I mean, there was actually a group that I don't run around with them anymore, but I actually found a group out in the valley, and this was when the Rams were not in LA. And what they would do is they would actually gather at local sports bars, like even in the valley where I live outside of LA. I found them on Facebook. I was like, oh, I thought I was the only one around this area because I was even probably one of the few people on my college campus during my undergrad who was wearing actually this Falk jersey that I still have.
Hey, you'd be surprised to find some people like that. I mean, there's always those clubs. So it's like when I first moved out here, I wasn't really sure about the chapter, but it's taken me to games when I had the free time. But, last year, this was probably the most shocking, unexpected turn. I never gone to a playoff game, but this upcoming season, when I went to that Niners and Lions game, it was just unexpected. I didn't have nothing planned. I was already but I guess a certain follower just suggested offer me the ticket. I just, I was gonna just say I'm thanks for your offer, but I don't want nothing in return like that, bro. So it's like, but then he kind of just kept pushing it. I said, all right, I'll go. And then it was a great moment, watching the Lions and all that. But I'm not the kind of guy that just gonna take it. I'd rather make sure it's in good hands before I even accept it because I don't want to be put into something like that. So I rather buy it on my own personally. But it's like if they do it, okay, no big deal.
But personally, if I had to call projections of the next Rams and Niners game, the only thing I could say, it's going to be another close one.
It's going to be one of those, maybe another, it might be one of those overtime games, maybe a 2 overtime. Maybe, I don't know. Wait, they can't even do a 2 overtime. It has to be in the playoffs for that.
Well, yeah. But
like I've seen it going down to overtime multiple times.
I think it's going to be, it's definitely going to be a back and forth if McVay could just play 4 quarters. And I need to, and I mean, I know we might be over time, but the one thing that I need to touch on that's been a pet peeve of mine with McVay is, and a lot of people don't know this, he has got to step back on the play calling. And the only time he needs to do that is when he's facing Shanahan, because Shanahan is the one who wrote his schemes. And that is why it is a challenge for us. That's why it's a challenge for McVay to beat him. Shanahan's his kryptonite.
It's the master, the teacher. Like the teacher, the master. It's like one of those tough challenges and all that stuff. So yeah, dude. So we pretty much covered everything, but hey, in the near future, we'll definitely figure out something. It's just, I kind of just explained what my reason was, but we'll figure out something. But I love chit-chatting with other fans, especially if it's division. It doesn't matter to me. I kind of like keep it from, we may not agree with everything, so we may agree to disagree, but we all can respect one another and say we just want our teams to have a great season. So that's how I leave it at that,
Yeah, and I mean, just closing it out, I mean, honestly, with, some of the most heated moments that I have had with the Rams and 49ers rivalry, I can honestly still say the most fun that I ever have in watching football. It's probably in any sports, actually. This is probably my favorite rivalry over, Lakers and Warriors, even Dodgers and Giants.
I would have to agree on that part because when I look at the other sports, I don't really care for as much of the rivalry with the Warriors, even though I'm like the other way around. So it's like the Giants and Dodgers, it's got a good rivalry, of course. But if I had to go outside my rivalry, it's always going to be the other way around because when it comes down to it, being born in the state of Texas and being around a family that's Cowboy fans, I've always enjoyed those rivalries where I get a last laugh out of them. But the Niners and Rams, it's up there. Like you get some good excitement, you get a good rivalry. Maybe 3 times a year you might see this team meet up in the playoffs, but you get something. You get, like you said, maybe it might go longer, like maybe an overtime or potentially maybe a 2 overtime in the playoffs. But you're getting a physical kind of team. So
yeah, I definitely agree. Well, I mean, I like to travel, especially up the state, so you never know. I might just make my way up to the Bay Area.
Yeah, if you ever stop by and I got the time, man, we'll definitely link up. But I want to make sure this will be on my list at some point. I'm going to make sure I mark down going down to LA to your guys' stadium.
Would be happy to see that.
It's just things have been a little difficult for me as of recently, so. But thank you for the time, bro, and everybody else. We had a good time. But hey, this is Alvin Waters. He's a lifelong Rams fan, been around for many years around here. I know them for a while, and usually these kind of guys have good perspective of their teams. And I just decided to do something with all 31 teams outside of my comfort zone. Outside of the Niners, I want to see what got them into being fans. What their all-time players are and what they think of their team in general. And that's what I built this platform for every now and then. But hopefully you enjoyed this and everybody else. Have a great day. And for Alvin, bro, we'll definitely catch up sometime.